A very good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. 80 is very busy doing here what he needs to do. He's crunching the numbers there. Dato 80 KUMARARAJAH joining us all the time, bringing a little bit more to our broadcast here, especially at the English desk. And beside me is another fellow Malaysian. Don't let the pigmentation throw you out of this, okay? Okay, he's a Malaysian. He's very much a Malaysian. NORDIN ABDULLAH joins us on set. We're just fresh off the Prime Minister's second budget, yeah? So there was an argument about whether it's his first or second.
His first full budget.
His first full budget, yeah. But I think some are going with the second. We here at Bernama are going with the second budget. And
I'm going with the now budget.
The now budget, okay. So in the now budget, Budget 2024 emphasizes the importance of prioritizing the future for the country, or rather of the country, through unity and stability. Of course, a lot of people say we've heard this before, but I think in there lies the devil's in the details, and how this plays out before the end of the year and moving into next year is going to be very important for us, because basically we want to close that gap between the have and the have-nots. It's quite a task. We should have done this about 15 years ago, but we're finally getting to it now. And let's just start with your thoughts on what you were watching just now.
Yeah, it's to me, I kind of thought it's like a test budget, because we just heard it in the month of February, right? When he recasted the 2023 budget. So in many ways, what PMX mentioned in both in February 2023, end of July, in terms of the Madani economic narrative, and now as we hear the 2024 budget, you can see there is obviously the follow through in terms of what he wants to do, what we want to achieve in the 12th Malaysia Plan. I think it's based a lot of it on that basis, and also some of the newer things that has happened. He mentioned about the Fiscal Responsibility Act that has actually been adopted. So he's trying to keep the fiscal deficit to the 3.5%, but also taken in view of our $1.5 trillion debt. So there is legacy issues that he's carrying, but he wants to take the nation forward. And in many ways, this is a good budget.
Okay, so we say we want to see a 5% growth next year, or that's what's forecast for next year. Okay, for those of us who don't know this, how does this work?
So I mean,
just dumb it down a little bit for all of us.
For the next 7 years, right? So by 2030, we want to achieve a certain number of economic growth. For us to do that, we must grow at 6% every year. At the moment, World Bank has said we'll grow at 0.3. Our first half is 4.5, which means in the second half, we'll have to do at least about 6 to make sure that we land somewhere at 5%, which means we already will be in 1% down. We have to grow faster than the average. So to have the incremental growth, there are things that PM has announced in the budget, which we hope will be able to increase the momentum or the speed of growth that we need.
Right. So I think that
for me, it's about productivity. If you don't hit the productivity numbers, you're not going to hit the GDP growth. And I think this is where we've got to get to the point where we realize that money needs to go into certain programs.
So hang on, it discusses various initiatives and plans to improve the country's economy, education, and public services, including the development of a national digital identity and the restructuring of the economy to focus on high growth and high value sectors. And we always look to you to simplify this for me. I thought ChatGPT would do a good job.
Chat NORDIN. My son Saif says, Chat Saif, he makes it easy for me. But I think one of the things that when you look at this, you've got to say, what are the areas that are going to be high growth? Meaning, if we spend $100 here, is it going to give us the 150? If we spend $100 in another area, is it only going to give us 120? So this kind of simple thinking is like, okay, the government's only got a limited amount of resources, however many billion it is. You've got to be able to say, look, we spend this money in these areas, we're going to move faster. But at the same time, how are we going to move the economy to be able to move faster? And it's going to be around education, because economy is shifting to more service-generated economy. You're going to have to move people into the sector. To do that and to be competitive globally and regionally, you have to be able to deliver on productivity numbers, and you have to be able to deliver in competition with other countries around the world.
Right. So the speech aims to improve standard of living. Guys, just jump in anytime, yeah? for all citizens and make the country a regional economic leader, or that's what we want to do now. We're also talking about agriculture at this point. Now, education, the government plans to provide assistance to university students who have difficulties in paying tuition fees. This includes working with the PTPTN, or if you're watching this from outside Malaysia, the National Higher Education Fund Corporation. Basically, it's a loan to all of us who studied, or other agencies to facilitate payment and help students who have financial difficulties. Will this help?
Definitely, because you see again, right? So the Ministry of Education has the highest allocation, right? $58.7 billion, which means all throughout in terms of our building our human capacity, in terms of our human capital development, I think all that work is being done, including the importance given to TVET. The 6.8 billion is mentioned, I think one too many times, but that's the figure that we aim to. And it says 17 GLCs, 33 private sector have signed MOUs, and they're sector specific, geographical specific in terms of developing our TVET. And also one important thing, I thought realization of truth is also mentioning that our STEM interest has actually dropped. The STEM interest has dropped in the last 5 years, 5 percentage points, from 45 to near 40, which means
is that significant?
That's significant drop, because as it is, we are lacking behind in all these PISA rankings, and as it is, we must improve our STEM education, starting from secondary school. So that's importance, I think, will come through in this budget. At least in the next few years, we will see more investments, more incentives being built to push students towards STEM education.
Now, let's come back to you with a communications perspective. Yeah. Now, some years ago, there was a minister, of course, I won't mention his name, said, when a budget is tabled, or when we start putting out information to the public, we need to simplify the bits and pieces of information so it becomes coffee shop talk. Everyone talks about it, everyone becomes in the know. And I guess also, I'm going to move into philosophy and literature later, but so let's talk about communications perspective now. All of us are trying to sound better than the next person, especially in the media. Us, then there's the business station, and then there's the other station. We're all trying to find bigger words.
We trying to simplify it.
I think
we're trying to keep it
simple. Keep it simple.
Use layman language.
You've got to get it to just. Communication is two things, really. And if you draw one circle, you put in everything in that circle is what you want to hear, right? Now you draw another circle, which is everything that I want to say. The question is, can you put this? Is there any overlap in this with these two circles? What you want to hear and what I want to say. So in this budget, what is it that is in this thing? If you're a fisherman, you want to know what subsidies are going to go happen around fishing and
diesel
and all this kind of stuff. So there needs to be a dedicated communications campaign that somehow reaches the fishermen.
Right.
Which is it through the handphone, or is it newspapers, or hey, they're out in the middle of the ocean. Maybe you need to communicate to their wives. Right. Who are the ones who say, hey, honey, when you get home, this is what you need to know about. So when you start to design communications, and that could literally just be like 0.186 of the budget. There could be a huge amount of work done on every single sentence.
So that 0.186 is not an actual number, is it?
No, there's 186. Page 72.
Okay.
But it's actually about motorcycles.
Okay,
and,
since you talked about Nelayan just now, let's just quickly get to the agricultural commodities sector. Now, the government plans to allocate funds to encourage small farmers and improve land use. Now, you've been in the know of governmental work for quite some time now. How do you see this?
So you must understand, right? So is this importance or the refocus on it started happening after COVID, because then many countries realize security is beyond having military and equipment. It is also a lot to do with food security. So the importance of ensuring that we have food security, which
you just mentioned his favorite word, food security.
Please. Which primarily means, right? So government has always said, look, we have underutilization of in terms of our land, and I think government has not only put aside the usual conventional way of developing, they've also said, look, we will even support walk-off land development. And I think it is to make sure that we start building up. Look at what's happening to our land.
Sabah and Sarawak is now backtrack a bit. What's wakaf land?
So wakaf land is land which is under Muhimud Trust and Malays, and a lot of that land is
kept
left
in
idle.
trust.
Which means they need to develop it, and there's no incentive to develop it unless government steps in and says, look, we provide you some funding, we can match whatever you're developing, and that way land utilization becomes important, because we have fairly good amount of land, but it's not utilized at optimum levels.
It's not utilized at optimum levels.
100% of the land.
Your
needs to
2
be-
cents,
Yeah,
yeah.
100% of the land needs to be there to produce 100% of the food that you need, so that you're not wasting the resource. The other resources is when we talk about the budget, we're talking about the financial resources that go into this. But now you've got a land resource that doesn't get used, so you can't get the 100% out.
You know how important this is, right? So if you take from what NORDIN says, back in his previous life country, Qatar has got the size of Singapore. No, it's
Okay.
Qatar has got the
Yeah,
size of Singapore in Australia,
Right.
just to ensure they've got food security. So that's how important nations put in terms of food security, and especially land.
Right.
So Malaysia could be.
Okay, so when we talk about land, do we have a problem?
We don't have a problem. We have a problem with land utilization.
Land utilization. So these lands were not, the lands needed weren't allocated at the time it was meant to be allocated. Can we say that?
It's lying idle.
Lying idle.
Sitting there doing nothing.
Doing nothing.
When you could be growing rice, or you could be growing.
So that's why suddenly they, so if you see in Sabah and Sarawak, they found huge tracts of land which is left idle, and says, let's start farming in here in terms of improving our rice cultivation. So that's kind of thoughts that needs to happen. And I think in this budget, PMX has started the right steps.
Okay, so in this budget, so we're going to address this to it. In agriculture, I think the main thing we want to look at is food security. Number 2, beras or rice. Yeah. So what do we need to understand about this? When we talk about rice, everyone's no rice, no rice. What do we need to know about this and the budget?
Well, the first thing we got to think about is, where I'm from, Australia, actually we produce more rice than Malaysia. So how is it possible that a bunch of Saleh guys are sitting around growing rice more than Malaysia, when Malaysia is a rice-producing country? Why? Is because one guy will plant 1,000 hectares, for example. Now the problem is we've got a gentleman, usually a man over the age of 55, who runs a very small.
Don't talk about
smallholders.
This is the archetype of who the person is farming. So, does he have access to drone technology? Does he have access to all this other technology that makes him productive? So, to make him productive with this technology, you need the funds to be able to.
But you also need the economics of scale.
Yeah.
So somebody who's having
50 acres. Yeah.
So don't even talk about 50 acres. Most of our farmers have got single-digit acres.
Right.
2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres.
Right.
So even government has, it's even subsidy for you to get it. I think minimum you need 2 hectares. Right. So that's what the government has said. So even if you see this, one of the announcements that PMX made just now in terms of that floor pricing for paddy, moved it from 1,200 to 1,300, and that's another good step. The thing about rice issue and this supply and demand of rice thing, it's more of market manipulation, as you can see in the last few days, how much of rice has been hoarded or manipulated and such. So it is not so much of a sudden supply issue. Yes, as globally the prices have gone up, but this is something very localized and also something which is transient.
And it's psychological.
Yes, and we need to make
Transient
this
and
change.
psychological.
No,
These are
because
the,
handing people go and buy a whole bunch of it, and you can't find it.
And they
And it
won't
keeps
consume
going.
that much. So
This
now
is
they
the
every
bread during COVID story lah.
correct.
Yeah,
So every
okay.
house now is hoarding rice.
Yeah.
Those days you find the middleman hoarding rice. Now every house is hoarding rice because suddenly he feels like, oh, what if I don't get it for the next 3 months?
Right.
So he's carrying 3 months of supply.
Right.
The country itself is only carrying 5 months of supply.
Okay.
For no reason.
But
very
it's interesting.
little reason.
But this is the psychology. Or would you say it's sort of our kind of mindset? Like,
No, this is just knee-jerk.
Yeah.
And like what nobody said, I mean, I think in the early days of this rice crisis, right? So digressing a bit from the budget, but early days of rice crisis, the communication was not handled very, very well. So people were having different opinions of why there was not available rice. And when the local rice is now being sold as repackaged as imported rice, and also then plastic rice, and then they have to apologize. The guy in Sandakan, if I'm not mistaken.
of course, yeah.
So a lot of this misinformation came, and there was no single source of information. To be fair, the government, I think, in that way, kind of had a misstep. They should have, put in place and says, look, we need to manage this as a national crisis. There was just too many.
But there must be.
sporadic-
Okay, so when we're talking about it as a national crisis, there must be a build up to this. It didn't just appear and land on our laps. It would have been, building up behind the scenes in the past, say, 10 years. Yes, maybe. Perhaps. No, you're not agreeing with me.
No, I'm hearing you, but whenever you think about
Why are you talking about the rise or you're talking about the budget?
Am I talking about rise? Then we get back to the budget. Yeah.
when you want to create a crisis, you have to create a narrative first.
Yeah. Okay.
So to create narrative, the best thing is you create fear.
Chip, you're sounding like the war that's going on in the Middle East.
Any war, because you're talking about information warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the way you do it. So you create a set of fears that react on people, and then people behave in a certain way. And what's the behavior is they go and buy a whole bunch of rice, and then they can't find the rice in their local store on a Thursday morning. If they went the Thursday afternoon, it was there, but Thursday, okay. So
So let's move to tier 2 of this mechanization and automation in reducing dependence on foreign labor in agriculture. Is that even possible?
Not only agriculture, they're across the board.
Yeah.
The government's commitment is in the 12th Leadership Plan is that we must only have 15% maximum foreign workers. But as it is, we still keep making this concessions towards certain sectors, certain industries to allow them to bring in foreign workers. But then you must also give them the time to move. To be fair, Malaysia is still very much dependent on low value, low wage foreign workers.
Low value, low wage foreign
Which is
workers.
what Vietnam is at this point in time, this powerhouse of Vietnam. But then Vietnam also will move up that value curve. At some point in time, people will say, look for another country which has got lower wage and low value jobs like this.
Right.
Malaysia needs to step up its game. I think we have done fairly well with our National Industrial Master Plan, some of this moves. But I think this foreign worker discussion must kind of stop.
Now you say low value, low wage.
Versus your HGHV.
Yeah.
Okay.
High growth, high value.
Right.
So that's what Malaysians have to be. Malaysians have to be in this higher threshold. So actually, technically, the economy can sustain a certain percentage of low value doing this low value work, but actually you want to eliminate it through technology. But where Malaysians and where we need to attract the investment and have the incentives that attract the investment is in this high value stuff. And the only way you're going to get there is through high education.
I'm going to say something very cliche, something very amateur, but they say, for a country to grow, you need to have a flourishing middle class. So the way I see it is like this. Now, if I call a plumber to my house and say, Aming, you fix my pipe for 20 ringgit or 30 ringgit, that has to change, isn't it?
So the Aming doesn't exist. You must understand. Now, you call Aming because there's no... he's only now my dad's days. Now, the guy you call is either Bangladeshi or Myanmarese, who's probably has the citizenship.
Correct.
Also.
But the same Bangladeshi or Myanmarese friends of ours who are in Australia at this point, if you were to call them to just have a look or to just check out diagnose what's happening to in your house, that sets you back 100 Australian. Am I right?
Well, I mean,
just for them to come there and look at it.
If you get it. But the reality is the labor law. You will pay the same amount for an Australian or a foreigner to do that work. So you can't have a two-tier wage system. You've got to have this is the cost.
What I'm getting at is, are we as a people ready for this? We want the Prime Minister to make this a high-income nation, so on and so forth. And for that to happen, these things will change
But
too.
these gradual things, that's the thing, right? For it to happen, then our wage structure needs to change. For our wage structure needs to change. One thing I didn't see it, right? So in the 141 pages which is printed there, right? So there is no mention of the progressive wage model. But I believe the progressive wage model, since has been handled by YB Rafizi and YB Kumar and all that, I suppose they will handle it at some point in time. Though I was hoping that there will be some insights to it in the budget. And which is not there, which are very important to if we need to afford it, then the wages simply need to move.
Right. For those of you just joining us on this broadcast, maybe you want to read out the 4 main areas discussed.
You want me to read?
Yeah, come on, man.
Here. 4 main areas discussed: agriculture, commodity sector, the economic restructuring, improving the standard of living for people, and of course the small and medium enterprises, SMEs. Dato', I know you wanted to have a bunch
So
to
that
say
is what?
about that. No, I'm taking over your
Right.
job.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Okay.
ask you
Go
some
for it. Yeah.
You'll be out of a job.
Yeah,
This is what
yeah,
happens.
yeah, I
This is
know,
what
I-
happens when foreigners
I
come in,
This is-
and
I
then
know.
you'll be out of a job.
No, but I get the high value
Yeah.
job now.
Okay. Yeah.
Gerard's job's high value.
But
Yeah, but
You would think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
didn't government servants get a bunch of money?
2000.
Yeah. Let's not
2000,
talk.
no?
We'll keep that for the end. La.
No.
Okay. Let's get back to economic
Yeah,
restructuring.
so if you want, almost the SMEs are the
With AC sitting here, you're asking me about SME.
I'm saying the SME is that business middle class, as it were. So can we get this, and does this budget address this business middle class to really drive things? And is it creating the ecosystem that when these foreign investors do come in, they can say, "Oh wait, you've got a bunch of high value people to plug into." What do you think, Dato'?
No, that's the thing, right? So, I mean, as far as SMEs are concerned, the structure is very simple. You need to provide them access to financing. You need to provide them access to market. You need to provide them increase in human capital development. You need to improve their capacity. And also you need to provide them some sort of a strategic interest. Now, the strategic interest sectors that need to be focused, I think has been addressed quite a number of times in Madani Economic Narrative and our National Industrial Master Plan. So this sectors have been more or less identified. So access to financing, I think the number that we will eventually land up is about just on the north of $10 billion, which means about $10 billion in terms of government financing.
This is what you're projecting.
No, this is what has been mentioned,
yeah.
right? In total, 40 billion. Out of that 40 billion, about 10 billion would be financing as such, right? Then the rest of it will be in terms of increasing in our human capital development. I think he has put that work cut out for HRD Corp in terms of the $1.6 billion, which is not really a grant, but I believe that's really going to come out from the levy that they've been collecting. And also in terms of for women and youth, the allocation is about $720 million across this many agencies. But mind you, Gerard, you must understand, right? So when it comes to SME development, this country, again, we hope SME Corp still comes up as the aggregator, but we still have 16 ministries and close to 60 different agencies working on just SME or micro SME development.
Or is that a good or bad thing?
That's not a very good thing.
I mean,
For a country of our size,
good that they're doing it, but maybe
but 60 agencies is one too many.
Okay.
One too many. We need to have a lot more in terms of consolidation, convergence of policy. Follow through needs to happen, especially micro. 1 million of the 1.3 million registered companies in this country is micro, and out of the micro, you just don't provide them funding from TECO, Namanaitya, microfinancing. You need to help them build capacity. You need to have them build knowledge.
Listen, talking about building, sorry for butting in, but from the great lockdown to now, there was a bunch of help given out at that time.
Yes.
And does that spill into where we are now today?
I think
Or
it's
is that overdone with?
long spent. But
Long.
but if you ask me now,
Long spent. That was a lot of
It's
money.
like-
Yeah.
Yeah, but long gone. I mean, it's being gone and done now in the next chapter. But if you ask me, what we've got to look at is which of those micro companies can we graduate into the next level?
So these high performing micro
Yeah.
companies, actually,
Yeah.
hypos. Nah. So the hypos of the micro.
Yeah.
So I give you a simple example. If you look at the KUD, right, 20% of their borrowers are these hypos, small companies, but they're performing very well. The one big indicator is the tech that they've got a classification, right? So
Right.
A1, A2, A3, right up to E. Those A companies are nearly 20 to 25%, which means of the high performing micro companies, we can obviously take them to the next level, but that next level needs to have a very concerted, clear effort. And that cannot come from 60 agencies.
And the problem is there's a lot of people who don't necessarily want to move out of their comfort zone.
Right.
So they're actually enjoying where they
That's
are.
basic human nature. We all
Yeah,
know.
so and the other thing is to get someone from that level to the next level, you let's say you spend $10,000 getting them to this first level. To get them to the next level may cost you 50,000. It's not the next step up is 50,000. The next step up from there is not
But that's an
100,000.
investment
It's
the
2 million.
government can make, because that will have a huge amount of economic multiplier.
Correct, because during COVID days, and I'm no SME specialist like he is. During COVID days, we always used to say this: SMEs are the lifeline of our economy in Malaysia, and they need to help need to be helped come hell or high water back then. And I think they're back to do to bring the economy up to speed again. I don't know.
You look at like one of the good announcements, right? So PMX made about the My Startup, right? So he says, look, we are allocating $28 million to this to ensure that all the startup ecosystem is well funded, because that $28 million becomes an impetus to actually aggregate about $200 million in total allocation under many agencies.
Right.
So those initiatives is what rightly, I give you another example. Bank Negara says in this country, for startup ecosystem, only 15%, 15% is actually funded from the formal banking institution or financial institutions, which means 85% is shoestring. Right. It's budget from, me, myself, and I, or family or friends. So, which primarily means I think we need to step up our startup ecosystem if we need to improve and have a very flourishing Silicon Valley type of.
But that's possible, isn't it? We're really very close to that already, isn't it?
It's the Machi and Pachi class that are pushing this thing along.
Yes. Right.
But at the same time now, we've got to think about the younger group, because for me,
younger group
like,
within
for example,
the SME industry.
Like, I brought Zara today.
Okay.
And we're like, hey, give us all the research, get all this stuff to us, because
that's free labor.
Yeah, exactly. I know. In some countries, it's illegal. But the point is, what we need is this younger group of people who understand these next generation problems and can deliver that. And for me, that is one area that we need to look at. I don't know, Datuk, when the budget is.
So we need to speed it up, because we need to move to the improving the standards of living in Malaysia. So just continue what you're saying. And also
when the budget
is, are we addressing this younger?
So we're not addressed it from again. We have to go through it in a lot more.
My boss sent me a message, says you're showing fingers and hands at each other.
Your turn. So 100. See, again, it may not be in the budget proper, but it has certainly been addressed in. You must understand, in this year alone, we have had the 5 major policy directions. Health Malaysia Plan midterm review, NIMP, the National Industrial Master Plan 2030. We have had the NETR 2 versions of it, 1.0, 2.0, and then we have had now budget 2024. So many of this, directional things have happened this year. It is somewhere in this year. It is certainly part of the agenda moving forward, right? So,
but at least we know we're not moving on autopilot.
We're not moving backwards.
Backwards and on autopilot. Everyone's just doing whatever you think so? There was never a time?
No, never a time. You cannot use COVID.
I'm not saying COVID. I'm talking about way before COVID. There were lull moments.
In fact, minus the political players, I think we had direction even then.
Plenty of direction.
Yes. Okay. Look at the ETPs those days.
I'm alone on this now. Okay.
Sorry.
Right. No, please keep on going.
In terms of economic planning, 5-year plans, 15-year plans, sectorial plans, there's tons of it. I think what we need is get to delivery.
Implementation.
Get to delivery.
Right. So now we are expecting the Prime Minister, and I might be wrong again. We're all expecting the Prime Minister to perform like a Manchester United manager. I'll give you 1 year. It's just been a year, and we have had so many milestones. Which is just we're just
November 24th.
November 24th. We move into a year. So we're closing in on the year, and we've reached so many milestones and maybe checkpoints to move forward. I think this is a good thing. But the problem is, how do we relate this message to people on the ground? People need to, hold their horses for a bit.
Cabinet reshuffle.
Okay.
So who's going to carry this? For me, the going to deliver.
Wow.
Actually, to me, right? So the budget is done. So who's delivering this budget for 2024?
Right.
Which is PMX team? The A team or the team that's going to deliver this budget, and that really needs to be put in place.
So I think, taking a step back, I think the political players in this need to understand that the Prime Minister needs all the help he can get,
and the urgency.
And the best man forward, you put your first 11 up to play and see where we can go from there. Give it a year.
No, I agree. We don't have time.
You agree? You don't agree?
I agree that we don't have time. I agree. If you don't get it right, and when you get it wrong, that's when people get upset.
Right.
And I think this is the big promise of change. If you can put all the plans in place,
right,
but you've got to deliver, and not just deliver in the sense of, okay, this budget is there, this plan is there. Can you go to someone in downtown Kuantan and say, okay, is your life better today, or is it not better? Not this year,
Right.
3 or 4 years time. Can they? And how are we benchmarking? And you've got to start now. Actually, it's tough, boring work benchmarking, and I think people have,
Data collection was never a great job.
We're in this economy that's driven by handphones. Is what we call the fulfillment and what's this another word for it?
So that's the reason why we did.
Fulfillment economy.
But talking about handphone, that's the reason why we didn't increase the sales and services tax for telcos from the current 6 to 8. So telcos have been given waiver, and also food and beverage.
So it's telcos, food and beverage. Yeah, okay.
Logistics companies.
Logistic companies.
It's very good because logistic companies this multiplier effect. Whether you get it right or wrong, then
right. So I mean, if you look at this, look at all the help that's coming in this way. Do you think it's going to help improve the standard of living? Because that's what we want to segue into now.
Okay.
Or segue into now. Yeah, go.
It has to. I mean, as we look at, and why are we in the kind of fiscal position where we are now is because we spent so much during COVID. Whether we had to spend X billion or another 10 billion, another 20 billion, the debt is there. So now we've got to dig ourselves out of this hole. So getting to that point now is, yes, we're going to spend money on lifestyle, and we're going to spend money on improving the livelihoods of the B40.
I need to stop you here because you said the debt is there. But when you talk to some economists, say any country has a debt. Why do you talk about debts all the time?
No, but that's because also the Prime Minister does use that as a preamble to many of his speeches. So maybe he's been carried away with that 1.5 trillion.
Yeah, you need the economic resilience. The thing is, can you continue to hit? Can we continue to take? Can the ringgit continue to go down?
We already at our debt ceiling. We are already at a debt ceiling, which is perfectly fine. We put a little bit of fiscal discipline behind us during COVID, but that's not something unique to Malaysia.
So was that good fiscal discipline that we?
No, many countries. Actually, Malaysia came out pretty well in terms of pump-priming its economy during the time. If not, you must understand, right? So, Gerard, go back to COVID time, right? So people say, look, you have at least about 1 million plus losing jobs. No, we didn't have 1 million people lose jobs. We had maybe at the most about 100,000 people lose jobs because government stepped in with all the wage subsidy programs. I think 7 versions of it.
Right. So that's going back to what you talked about earlier, the messaging that goes down to the ground, to throw people off their game. And
no, but I mean, again, it's easy for opposition or just agitators. It doesn't have to be opposition to say, are you better off or you're not better off? Because people don't actually remember. So you actually need the data to prove it. And I think this is one of the things that I'm kind of excited. YB Rafizi continues to talk about is like data. And now I'm not just saying I've got the data. Now making it publicly available.
Right.
It's dangerous because why? You're going to make it publicly available.
Right.
But it's wonderful because you're going to make it publicly available. And whether or not that specific government department, that specific government agency, that specific ministry delivered, it's available.
Right. I'd like to quote as a friend of mine who's a very good-looking individual, Mat Saleh, who's told me this.
That's not you. No, it's not about you. No, it's not.
Hang on. So this is what he said. There's a healthy demographic of people in our country, Malaysia, 7 degrees north of the equator, that likes to just wait for someone to make a mistake and shake their finger at it. Do you think that makes this job
a lot more tougher?
A lot more tougher, yeah.
A lot more tougher. You must also understand that the political equation now we are in this so-called unity government, right? Or as it is, it's a misnomer. But the idea that we have a unity government in place, or this government in place, it needs to balance out so many different mazhabs. So these different mazhabs need to all have some sort of we agree to disagree on certain things, but we at least have some common ideas or platforms that we want to work on. And the economy is something that needs to be race or religious agnostic.
Yeah.
And I think PMX is trying to drive that. I mean, just before this, right? So one of those vernacular interviews earlier, and they asked me, is there anything for a specific community as such? And I said, look, Anwar is trying very hard to move to this need-based economy.
Right.
Let's not to say do away with it, but we take the fact that there is a race-based argument, but the government needs to move forward with a need-based, because everybody would benefit from that need-based statement.
Yeah, of course. I mean, foreign investors aren't necessarily understanding the racial
No,
dynamic. What
they
they
only
want is,
understand Malaysia.
I need 100 engineers. Do you have 100 engineers?
Right.
Are they really good? Are they qualified?
The people that invest in us.
That's
We thank you for your work.
I not me,
Yeah, but they also
but-
did
yeah,
Dinas.
right.
They also did Dinas.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's not even go there.
Let's not go there. Let's come back to the improving the standards of living.
Yeah.
And now, when we talk about, moving forward, we're having that one narrative. What's the work of opposition? Just so, I'm digressing. We're going to come back to the standards. of living.
Opposition,
So,
supporting
yeah.
opposition.
Opposition politically. Okay, so in the opposition is check and balance. Do we see that here?
Well, the first thing I was talking to one of my interns at MEDC, and I said prepare some statements.
And we're doing this public diplomacy. Like we want our investors to know what's happening.
The first thing he said, did the opposition come up with a counter budget?
No, but
They did it.
But no,
Yeah.
right, it's true.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's
true.
not
Yeah.
really true.
Yeah.
But that is something which very mature countries, Western economies, for such have a shadow budget.
No, but if we're going to be in the
But
top
we
30,
should go there.
We've been
If-
developing
if-
for the past 30 years. It should be a
The
full.
opposition wants to be part of the journey to the top 30.
But this government, the current government, at some point in time, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, they did come up with some sort of a semblance of a shadow budget. There was a shadow of a shadow.
Yeah.
But I think you must also, give this government a time, a little bit, to say, look, you guys are opposition, so you do come up with. They don't even have a shadow cabinet. What more shadow budget?
Right.
They should have budgets. They should have shadow policies. They should have these policy discussions.
Okay, so the question here given by Nur Shafika Mio, our producer, is how does the government plan to manage financial resources efficiently to improve people's standards of living? Now, one of our biggest problems in this country, Rais Hussain always likes talking about this.
Subsidized life.
Congratulations on his new position.
Oh yeah, congratulations to Rais Hussain.
Yeah.
What did he get?
Marathi chair.
Oh, wow.
So we better
Yeah,
be,
you-
get ready
That's
for
all.
some.
But number,
I know. I've been unwell and I haven't been reading much. Yeah.
What
Also,
was your question anyway?
yeah, my question was, the biggest thing he always talks about is corruption. Every time-
okay. Anwar speaks about it.
Yeah, he speaks about it more, but we want to reach all this, but how do we get there if we don't address this?
No, but I think you again, Gerard, something you cannot have this, this magic pill that solves everything within a day.
Right.
But I think he has taken certain steps. Look at government procurement. You look at at least moving forward.
Mhm.
Let's not talk about the baggage, but moving forward, we have taken a few steps. But this is part of that heavy lifting that happens
Right.
at the beginning.
Right.
So you must give him some time for this to work. These are not things that can immediately translate.
Right.
We have said we will come up in the top 25 percentile of the CPI, the
Mhm.
Corruption Perception Index, in 7 years, not in 7 days.
Right. I'm thrown off my game after listening to this Dr. Rais Hussain thing.
I mean,
Now, how are we going to get him in our coffee shop talk? We can't anymore. Yeah.
His coffee shop is in Meranti.
Meranti now,
You can't
yeah.
afford it.
He's got-
Get
he's
it
got-
right. Get it right somehow.
Okay, coming back to improving the standards of living, and one nice way of saying, I like the way it's said in Bahasa Melayu, kemiskinan tegak. We need to get rid of it. Okay,
No, betul. I mean, actually, there's.
apa betul?
No, betul. Kita mesti
Menoktakkan miskin tegak.
hapuskan.
Menoktakkan.
Yeah, because if we
Someone's
go-
showing off like Bahasa Melayu is very
Tadi
good.
dia
Yeah.
cakap mazhab, wakaf, pandai lah dia.
So my Bahasa Melayu is A1. bro.
Okay, A1.
Very
Okay.
good.
Bahasa Melayu A1.
English is A2. Unfortunately.
No,
Okay.
but I think this is, I think we're
I mean, I
looking
got 5 for Bahasa Classic, if that means anything.
at-
Bahasa Classic is what
Oh,
you
no.
the pickup lines.
Okay, coming back. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're gonna in trouble, there's the
Yeah.
Tamil in here, right? I will get you to.
Get him to read
get
it.
you to read
Tirukkural.
the Tamil.
Okay, he's going to read the Tirukkural
okay.
for us. Yeah.
But I think I think the data is about 150,000
Households.
yet to go. So it's going to take money, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take investment from the country.
Mhm.
If you look at where Malaysia has come, I think Sarawak, after independence was 40-50% under the poverty line. So actually, you've got to look at it in much longer terms. Countries like China talk about how they've done this. it's taken them 2 generations. So the fact that we're only down to the last 100,000, actually, we're very close.
No, again. So you look at the updated number which PMX mentioned just now. From that 100,000 households, now we are at 0.2%, which is about 18,000 households. So that $750 million that has been spent in the Initiative Pendapatan Rakyat, the IPR, the Menoktakan Miskin Tegak, is something that has worked. And he said he's putting another $500 million, $500 million for next year to continue this work, so that by end of at least next year, we would have actually done away with this miskin.
So where do we find that fine line between giving a man a fish and teaching him how to fish?
Some people you just have to help. And there is going to be a group of people like that. The budget also includes stuff for OKU. Of course, a lot have been done over the last 5-10 years for the OKU in Malaysia.
So that's measure, right? So but the word that this Rafizi and gang tends to use, YB Rafizi tends to use, is this assisted basic income. You need to provide that direct basic sustenance. No, you can teach them how to fish, but if you cannot keep the throat full, right? You cannot teach them. So you need to at least have that basic sustenance, which is the assisted basic income, then provide them all that capacity building. So you will see all that midterm to long-term changes, but you need to take care of their basic income.
Simple things. I mean, it's like the programs that feed kids in school. You can't learn when you're hungry. So you've got to just say, okay, we've got to spend this money.
Right. So that's the reason why we are spending $10 billion in STR, right? Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah, which will benefit 9 million Malaysians, which is 60% of the adult population. So we're still at that number. This started during Najib's time with BRIM, and now it's STR. But the number of 9 million is kind of just, I suppose, increased by a couple of million compared to earlier. But that money needs to be spent, and that money is coming from our subsidy rationalization.
Right. So when we look at areas where people are hardcore poor, there are quite a few that's been ascertained in the country, and some of it in Sabah too. And with the distribution of help, of course, you distribute help, but in every state the needs differ. Working with something like this, how do we work with something like this with differing needs? Then because you're talking about targeted subsidies,
I think there's two things, and I was very fortunate to be not in Sabah but in Sarawak, part of some of the biggest strategic master planning that goes on there. Sometimes you look at the map and you find a community of like 10-15 families in the middle of nowhere. These are unfortunately not economically viable communities. So over the course of 5 or 10 years, you need to shift these people into towns, into cities. You can't just rip them out of their kampongs. So some of that needs to take place, and it just takes time. And it takes there's budget in here about the roads in Sabah and Sarawak, massive multi-billion-dollar highways that are being built. Actually, that is an anti-poverty project. Why? Because that will create a natural attraction to live in these areas, because it now becomes more viable.
And one more thing, right? Among the things that you see towards the very end part of this budget speech, right? So the Madani community programs, something which has never been done before. This is something very new. So he said, look, the community can decide what are the good programs they needed, and government will give you about $100,000, up to $100,000 in terms of a community grant, which is something which is very, very good. So you kind of disfranchise the whole thing. You use a very differentiated approach. You can think global in terms of, say, Menoktakan Miskin Tegak, but you act local. So what works in a very small community in Sarawak, that approach will be very different than what you do for urban poverty in the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur.
But I think one of the things that you have to have for all communities, all individuals in Malaysia, is access to the internet and the digitalization of the Malaysian experience, so that every individual with a handphone can be part of the digital economy. And I think that is going to be the great way to just bring,
don't you think that should go hand in hand with education? Of course, you spoke about literature and philosophy. I'm down for that, because we don't read enough. But carry on.
But if we can get that communication right, that infrastructure right, again, it's about spending money, and again, it's going to cost more money per head to provide internet to Sabah and Sarawak. But you've got so many huge amounts of resources over there, and you've got to deliver.
But I'm sure in 5 years' time from now, we'll be sitting back and saying, looking at the stellar example that Sarawak has. Sarawak is basically an outlier in this whole way. The way they have started moving, the way they have said, look, we've become autonomous to a very large extent. Hydrogen, green economy, buses running on hydrogen fuel. They are exporting. I mean, all these Korean companies, Sumitomo, and all these guys have invested in big ways in Sarawak in terms of hydrogen. They are actually, very viable, very active economic ecosystem.
So how did this happen in just a few years?
The political narrative.
The political narrative.
Yeah, political narrative. They suddenly found the importance.
Sorry.
No, yeah. I mean, they've got companies that's going to rival Petronas in no time. In next 5 years, their Petronas equivalent will match our. I mean,
Petros.
Yeah, exactly. Petros will match Petronas at some point in time.
No, and the reality is they've got access to energy, whether it's hydrocarbons or the hydro energy. And imagine Sarawak is
and the land size.
And they're going to be supplying. They're going to be the one supplying energy to Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei.
Right.
So that's going to be
and the
massive
movement
amounts
of
Jakarta to
Kalimantan.
Kalimantan.
That's really another bonus.
Yeah. Was that the thing that started all this?
That's one of the things that gave the boosters to this already good rocket.
So actually, my money is on Sabah and Sarawak, especially Sarawak. With the energy, with their drive, with their passion, and they've got
the political stability.
Very strategic location.
And the
quite a
political
few
leadership.
ends here.
And the political leadership.
Yeah.
So again, Sarawak would be a very, it's a textbook idea.
Yeah.
You go to Sarawak only for the festival, right?
I'm part of Sarawak. I was there with them for the Asia Music Festival, the Borneo Jazz Festival.
I also won the Anak Sarawak Award.
Anak Sarawak Award.
Pun dapat lah.
Dapat lah.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm Anak Sarawak.
Right. We've got a few minutes left. Before we move into the last segment, which is one of my favorite segments, healthcare, I'd like to thank a few people, especially people in our team, our little team. We've got Nur Shafika Mio, Azura Aziz, and Fazlina Zawawi.
And that guy, who's the one from
Timor-Leste?
And Turkey?
Yeah.
So
we've got Ali, got quite a few interns helping us. Akhbar Jihad, who's helping us today from Timor-Leste. We've got an international team of sorts. And the people who enable all this, Encik Hakim Zaini and Hassan. Hassan is the man who set this up for us. Thank you very much.
Again, this is like first for Bernama, right? So we must thank Bernama.
No. I'm not first for Bernama. First for the English broadcast of Bernama. So when we talk about the English broadcast, I hope in the budget next time, there's always allocations for different broadcasts.
You're telling this to your man?
I mean, no, I'm just telling you, putting the word out there. It's always good to put the word out there. No, you are not being a sounding board. You are being an instigator here.
No, but is there budget in the budget for?
Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll just put that on the back burner for a while and move into healthcare. Now, healthcare, we say we're spending most on healthcare. PMX said he wants to spend more on healthcare in this budget.
He has put pen to paper.
He's
put pen to paper because it's increased the Ministry of Health budget by 13%. Now it's at 41.2 from the earlier 36.3, which means he has increased the budget. I think for the very first time we have had a 13% increase in budget because he recognizes not only, our healthcare system. I think recently there was a ranking. I think one of the world's third best healthcare system. We have a very good public healthcare system.
Right.
And I think he needs to put budget behind infrastructure, which is maybe already breaking at the seams, and also making sure that we've got enough human capital, but we just need to provide them better incentives and maybe permanent jobs. And certain equipments and including buying of the disposables, medications.
Right. It's also an income earner. So many people come to Malaysia.
Also we forgot to thank the whole healthcare. The civil service, the healthcare industry
kept us alive.
Kept us alive. Frontliners.
The other day I went there to the respiratory center in Kuala Lumpur, and so I don't know how much of a strain this is on the system. I pay 5 ringgit. I have inhalers because of the haze. Inhalers that are worth 150 ringgit each. 2 were given to me, plus the antihistamines. plus the medicine.
That is why we have
For
got
$5.
the best healthcare system.
Correct. So how can we sustain like this? How do we make this system a bit better?
So he's also said that we will work on everything that's been mentioned in the health white paper.
Right.
So he said, I think there are 4 strategic trusts there, and that 4 strategic trusts will be addressed together with this $1 billion
I think
budget.
one of the things I think it was in the news a couple of days ago was this still going on is the generation endgame.
Oh yeah.
So getting sorry, boss.
Generation Endgame.
Generation Endgame. Why? Because
Closer.
closer.
Yeah.
Keep it
Okay,
close.
okay.
So the fact that you are removing the threats and the things that's causing these problems. So remove this stuff quickly.
But they didn't present that bill.
I don't know yet. I mean,
They're supposed to have presented it in Tuesday. So I think the lobby groups, that's how I probably want to use it, has said no, it's really not the time. They kind of postponed it, but I think government should just put their foot down and just get the bill passed.
Yeah, I mean, it's only going to cost you money. I mean, the reason why it's generational means it's going to cost you money for a generation, or it's going to save you money for the generation. And so if you want that money to
$2 billion every year.
I mean, that's a lot of highways.
Right. So with the healthcare system, once again, we're going back to you because you remember once you were a doctor, a gynecologist. Can I mention this? Yeah. So he was like a gynecologist and he's seen quite a bit. Having said that, your thoughts. You work within the government system.
Right?
And
but don't forget, $41 billion also, 70% actually goes towards emolument, right? It's managing the staff that Ministry of Health has got, which is about 250,000. Right, they're second to Ministry of Education, which has got 400,000. So this 250,000 staff needs to be paid and be kept at jobs, which is quite taxing in time. In terms, they also need to ensure that this universal health coverage happens. One more good thing that is in this budget, right? First time I see a very specific, clear indication for electronic health records. PM has said, look, we need to increase our electronic or digital footprints of the healthcare system.
Right.
And I think it's first time allocated a fair bit for that, and that's a very good thing.
I hope a bunch of that money goes to cybersecurity because that's one of the key areas that the cyber guys, cyber terrorists go after because it's such a dangerous piece of information. So while you want to move forward with the digital economy and all this kind of, you've also got to be prepared.
Right. Just a couple of PSAs before we move on. I'm going to leave it with you about moving forward.
That's dangerous.
No. All we want to know is, how do we keep repeating this message until year and until next year, just so people know where allocations are, where to look for money, where to go for help. I'm just going to leave that with you. But just after our broadcast on Astro 502, Wan Sharina and gang are going to be on the show discussing this with a whole bunch of people. We're saying this quite a bit today. A bunch. It's like a verbal tick today. So they're going to be on TV. Astro 502. You want long reads, the good stuff, go to banama.com. Everything is there on banama.com. So you can find anything and everything about the budget there. Tomorrow, over the weekend, the English broadcast comes back. Daniel Rahman will be hosting a show at 2 p.m. on Astro 502 or go to banama.com. On Sunday, Nadia Latif will be hosting the next show. These are post-budget shows. It's going to go on for an hour. We'll be having Professor Ulung Raja Rasya. He's, part of the... and he's got a lot to say also. He's going to be on tomorrow. Okay, so we'll leave it with you, and then you close it up for us. Check WhatsApp for comments. Okay, all right.
Check WhatsApp.
Check WhatsApp.
Okay, my friends from MABC are saying, don't forget to mention the good thing around the Malaysia My Second MABC. Talking about the Malaysia My Second Home program, that's very good. But one of the things I want everyone to think about, and really whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, go.
Mr. Nara Subramaniam, he says, my two cents. If I may, we need to take politics out of our national budgets, and the expected budget outcomes should be apolitical and should have a longer-term plan tied in closely into 5-year plans. And that sounds
there. That's there. Those dots are connected.
Thank you, Inchinara. Thank you very much for that.
Very good. But for me, everything has to be about productivity. Private sector productivity, public sector productivity, and driving that into the reality of everybody. Right. You can't move forward unless you get the productivity equation right.
Right. So for us to keep repeating this message, of course, we need to sound like a broken record over and over again. And it takes the concerted effort of all media houses in Malaysia
Mhm.
to get this to happen. For me, I just want our economy to stand out, and I just want us to shine.
Yeah.
It's our time has come. We need to do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's Malaysia's time to stand up and be counted. We're competing globally. And if you want to compete globally, again, it's going to come down to productivity and being able to deliver, whether it's foreign investors or domestic investors. Actually, all Malaysians are domestic investors. They keep every SME is a domestic investor.
Every Malaysian drives his economy. 70% of our economy is run by the domestic.
Guys, look there. Look there. Yeah. Okay.
Close.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do we end this in 30 seconds? How do we end this?
No, I think the budget is a very good step towards the Madani economic narrative, and I think government has done what it needs to do. I think people need to also step up on their part. Some sacrifices need to be made, short-term sacrifices for our long-term gains, especially on the subsidies.
Short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. I like that one.
Productivity, public and private sector.
And I want to repeat what the Prime Minister says, noktakan kemiskinan tegak. We need to do that. We need to do that ASAP. Yeah. And on that note, we're signing off. Gerard, Ratnam, Dato' A.T. KUMARARAJAH, and
NORDIN ABDULLAH.
thank you very much. Stay with us right here on Bernama Broadcast. We are live on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, also Astro502 at bernama.com. Bye.